Good evening, everyone. If you own a firearm out there, hold on to it as tight as you can, because once again, the Democrats are coming for your guns. Now, the good thing is, thankfully, Republicans control the House of Representatives. They're not going to be able to push any major gun control measures through the House right now, which means we're safe. But I wouldn't put it past many of these establishment Republicans to jump on board the gun control train that the Democrats push. But still, even though they're not in control of the House, what are the Democrats pushing? Of course, being led by the White House. They want all-out confiscation. This is Karine Jean-Pierre today at the White House, cut one.
There are 25 million of these devices out there in circulation in the homes of millions of Americans, and therefore you can't ban them. What's the president's response to that?
That's unacceptable. That's our response.
So it's unacceptable. What was the number he used? 25 million, I think is what he said. I think there's far more AR-15s out there than that. That's what he was talking about. There is nothing wrong with an AR-15. There is nothing wrong with a weapon like that or any kind of that semi-automatic firearm that is perfectly legal, the most widely used, the most widely bought long gun in America today. The Supreme Court has ruled over and over again, those guns in wide use cannot be banned. Yet this is what they want. By and large, over and over again, AR-15s are used for home defense, they're used for hunting, they're used for sport, they're used for all kinds of things, except in the rare cases, and I mean rare cases, used for crimes. By and large, most of the guns used in crimes today are handguns, and we can get into that in a moment. And they're handguns that are illegally obtained by the criminals. These are not law-abiding citizens going out there and going hog wild on the world. These are mentally deranged, violent lunatics that are doing this, and that includes the woman, that transgender person that went into the Nashville school, that Christian school, and attacked those 3 adults and 3 children. And I do believe it was an attack on Christians, and I don't think it's a coincidence that she was transgender. So should they confiscate? Well, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about the confiscation issue, and she wouldn't answer. Watch this.
The last presidential campaign, one of the Democratic contenders said that what he would do is come for AR-15s. Does the president support not just banning the sale and manufacture of semi-automatic weapons, but further than that, confiscation?
Let me just be very clear. What we're talking about, AR-15s, these assault weapons ban, they are weapons of war, and they should not be on the streets across the country, in our communities. They should not be in schools. They should not be in grocery stores. They should not be in churches. That's what the president believes.
That may be what the president believes. It's not what the Supreme Court believes, and it's not what the majority of Americans believe. And you better believe it's not what I believe and Stinchfield's army believes. First off, she calls them weapons of war. The modern-day AR-15 right now in the hands of an American citizen would be an embarrassment for one of our members of the Army, Marines, whoever, Navy SEALs, you name it, on the battlefield. It would be an embarrassment. It is not a weapon of war. But with that said, I am a firm believer that there is nothing wrong with Americans owning weapons of war. When you think about what we went through to get to where we are today, facing the tyranny of England, what did we face? We faced off with equal firepower. They had cannons, we had cannons. They had muskets, we had muskets. Equal firepower allowed us to push back against a tyrannical government. That's what the Second Amendment was about. Now, I'm not saying everybody should go out and buy a tank, okay? I'm not saying everyone should go out and buy a rocket launcher. But what I am saying is that equal firepower against the government is exactly what our founding fathers wanted, whether the left wants to believe it or not. And equal firepower, even a rocket launcher, in the hands of a good, law-abiding citizen is going to pose zero threat to the community at large, okay? Zero. That's the bottom line. Still, what do the Democrats want to do? They love to play the blame game. I was listening to my buddy Charlie Kirk on this network. He was talking about this very issue, about how Democrats always blame everyone else for the problems of America. So we have this transgender shooter that goes in and shoots up a Christian school, killing 6 people. And instead of blaming the shooter, right, who takes ultimately the responsibility for this, You can maybe go down the road of mental illness. I throw mental illness out in many respects because I think anybody that shoots and kills somebody that is not in the line of self-defense has got to be mentally deranged. So you take violent individuals, instead of blaming them for this, what do? They blame, they blame people like me. They blame conservative influencers, conservative pundits, conservative talkers for somehow pushing this transgender person to go conduct this shooting. Ridiculous. They blame the anti-transgender laws in Tennessee and being passed in some states that say, hey, we don't want children mutilating their bodies before they are old enough to make a decision to do that on their own. They blame that for transgender community lashing out. They blame Christian parents, right, for all of this. And of course, they blame guns. That's the number one thing they blame, as if guns are transformers and somehow rise up on their own and lash out. Where do they get these ideas from to blame everything, to take away your rights? Well, the fish rots from the head. Joe Biden, again, says this about the Second Amendment. Joe Biden, cut 3.
These are weapons of war. I'm a Second Amendment guy. I have 2 shotguns. My sons have shotguns. But our states, everybody thinks somehow the Second Amendment is absolute. You're not allowed to go out and own an automatic weapon. You're not allowed to own a machine gun. You're not allowed to own a flamethrower. You're not allowed to own so many other things. Why in God's name do we allow these weapons of war in our streets and at our schools?
Because they're widely used firearms. They are not weapons of war. And again, do you see the talking points now? As the fish rots from the head, Joe Biden. Now, over and over again, what does he talk? He talks about shotguns, okay? Shotguns are great firearms. You're going to go duck hunting, use a shotgun. You want a gun for home defense? Many people love a shotgun for home defense. For me, I like more than 7 or 8 rounds in my firearm if I need a firearm for home defense. The best home defense gun, hey, I'm going to give you a little advice out there. People ask me all the time, what's the best home defense gun, Stinch? I tell them the best home defense gun is the gun that you feel most comfortable using, okay? That's the bottom line. To me, I feel most comfortable using my Glock 17, love it. I have a shotgun as well in the house, and I have an AR-15. I'm comfortable with all 3 of them. But I would rather go up against home invaders with as much firepower as possible. So Joe Biden can talk about shotguns. That may be good for him. But by the way, Joe Biden, I'm going to remind you something. You got Secret Service parked out of every window inside the White House. You got Secret Service right outside your door. Nobody's coming for you. Us, everyday Americans, Stinchfield's Army. We don't have that armed security. It's up to us. We are our own personal protection detail. So, of course, they want to blame guns, they want to blame us, they want to blame everything. Here's proof. Joe Scarborough, the guy that once called himself a Republican, what a disgrace, had this to say, cut 6.
You have these people that, we have to take care of children. We need to ban books. We need to freak out. We need to have these vague guidelines that so freak out librarians and teachers that they pull books about Hank Aaron and Roberto Clemente off the shelf. And yet they're cool with schools getting shot up over and over and over again because they won't pass legislation that will do something to stop it.
Yeah, what's the body count on critical race theory? Like, what's the tally of dead children?
I'll tell you what the tally of dead children is. The tally of dead children goes right on the hands of every single school administrator, every single lawmaker, from a state level all the way up to Congress, that refuses to put armed good guys in our schools and religious institutions across this country. Gun-free zones are, I promise you, the target for these mass shooters. Why are gun-free zones a target for mass shooters? Because criminals, I don't care whether you're a street mugger or you're a mass shooter, you exploit weakness, okay? You exploit vulnerability. We know this because the mass shooters say so. Even in this case in Nashville, passed up one school because the security was too tight. Do you know that 94% of all mass shootings take place in gun-free zones? That statistic runs from 1950 all the way up till this week, including the Nashville shooting. Gun-free zones. If it was a coincidence that mass shootings were taking place in these gun-free zones, If it was just a coincidence, then wouldn't it be equally spread all over the place? Of course. But it's not, because it's not a coincidence. They target the gun-free zones. Now, where is the worst crime in America? It's in the inner cities. It has the strictest gun laws on the books. Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, New York, LA. I could go on and on. Houston. They have the strictest gun laws in the books, these cities. And yet they are overrun with crime, not by law-abiding citizens, but by criminals who steal their guns and wreak havoc on the community. NBC goes down this path of saying that Republicans are shifting blame here, cut 7.
The conversation is pivoting, too, when it comes to some more conservative lawmakers, from changing gun laws to something like mental health, for example. Other Republicans to anti-trans rhetoric, or to calling this a hate crime against Christians. It seems like that's where the conversation is, at least in the House of Representatives.
But the bottom line is Republicans don't want to, tighten gun laws, and as a result, a number of these other explanations are coming up.
Tell me where tightening gun laws would work. Name me the law that would have stopped this shooter. Name it to me now. They want to say red flag laws. The problem is this woman's family saw problems. She could have gone to the police, red flag law or not. She could have gone and said, hey, somebody help me. Get my daughter under control, my 28-year-old. She didn't do that. Red flag laws weren't going to work here. Background checks weren't going to work. She got her guns legally. She passed background checks. Over and over and over again, by and large. These mass shooters, it's the first crime they commit. You're not going to stop them with more gun laws. Putting signs up on the door saying, stay out, guns not allowed. You think that's going to work? These people are idiots, man. They really, really are. I want to bring in now a gentleman who can prove to us that gun laws do not work. He's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. I've known him for years. He's a former senior advisor for research and statistics at the Justice Department's Office of Justice Programs. Dr. John Lott is with us. John, welcome back to the show.
It's good to talk to you again, Grant.
All right, John, I want to play a clip from CNN about guns killing children and all this. Cut 8, and I want to get your response. Roll it.
Pronouns do not kill children, right? People with guns kill children, and it's going to be a distraction in our coverage and keep us from what we now know, which is each of these cases has a similarity more than any difference.
So, again, John, they go down this road that guns are the #1 killer of children. What do you say to them?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of misleading things in that. One, they're comparing homicides rather than murders. The difference between the two are homicides include murders plus justifiable homicides. It's not really obvious to me why you want to include justifiable homicides, where a woman may shoot a rapist who breaks into her home at 2 a.m. in the morning as a bad thing in the same way that a murder is. But beyond that, the vast majority of those deaths involve rival gang members. You're talking about 17, 18, 19-year-olds who are fighting against each other over drug turf. Is that bad? Yeah, it's bad. Are any of the gun control laws that they're talking about going to stop it? No, it's not obvious to me. I mean, just look at Mexico. Mexico has had only one gun store in the country since 1972. The most powerful gun that you've been able to legally buy in Mexico since that time is a .22 caliber short round bolt action rifle. And yet, in only less than 0.1% of the adult population in Mexico is legally licensed to own a gun. And yet Mexico has a murder rate that in many recent years has been 6 times higher than the murder rate that we have here in the United States. So drug gangs are able to get a hold of guns just as easily as they're able to get a hold of the illegal drugs that they have.
All right. John, they want us to believe, though, when they say guns are the #1 killer of children, they don't want us to think about black-on-black crime in inner-city Chicago teens that are 17 years old. They want us to think of somehow this is 3- and 4-year-olds. That's not the case, is it?
No, I mean, often many people, when they use this, they talk about children. I guess the ones who are kind of trying to be more accurate talk about children or teens. up through 19 years of age. But what you have to understand is that the vast majority of these gun deaths are basically criminals involved in crimes against other criminals. And so, you're talking about gangs overwhelmingly involved in these types of murders that are there. Are they horrible? Yeah. Nobody wants anybody to be killed, whether they're gang members fighting over drug turf or not. But how are you going to deal with that? I could go and ban all guns today. I could click my fingers and call all illegal drugs to disappear from the United States and all guns. How long do you think it would be before illegal drugs started coming back into the United States? If you live in El Paso, 20 minutes? And how long would it be before they bring in the weapons that they need to protect that extremely valuable property that they have? It's not like a drug dealer can go to the police and say, look, this other gang stole my drugs. Can you help us get them back? They have to set up their own little militaries, and they will bring in the guns just as easily as they bring in the drugs that they sell.
John, the left wants us to believe that guns are responsible for all crime in America, especially violent crime, of course, when a gun is used. I saw a statistic that you had written about, that 8% of violent crimes, 7.9% of violent crimes are committed with a firearm. That's it. That means 92% of all violent crimes are not committed with a firearm involved.
Right. No, that's exactly right. I mean, the Democrats talk about crime always involving gun violence, but it's really misleading because, as you say, less than 8% of violent crime involves guns, and that's just not the recent numbers. I mean, that's been true for decades. You have that percentage that's there. If you want to stop violent crime, you want to make it risky for criminals to commit crime, whether it be the other 92% that's not using guns or the less than 8% that is using guns. It's the same way that you reduce it for all those things. And unfortunately, the Democrats aren't pushing that. Look, the interesting thing about that statistic, we've done surveys on asking people what percent of violent crime do they think involves guns. For Democrats, it's about 58%. For Republicans, on average, Republican thinks 38% of violent crime involves guns. The weird thing is that the people with graduate school educations think it's over 70%. And the wealthiest people, over 200 or 250,000, think that it's over 70%. But it's poor people, the least educated, the ones who probably realize firsthand that a lot of violent crime doesn't involve guns, who are the most accurate. I assume the people with graduate school educations are not just learning from their schools improperly, but also,
John,
they're the ones who just get their information about crime from the news media.
Real quick, because I'm just about out of time, and I think this is the most important thing that people can take away from this. And I know you and me stand firm on this. We're strong supporters of the Second Amendment. We know that guns are a powerful tool in the hands of good guys to make sure it keeps you and your family safe. Is there any statistics about how many times guns are used to do just that, to keep people safe, to stop a crime, to stop something from happening? Real quick.
Sure. Right. Well, it looks like people use guns to stop crime about 5 times more frequently each year than guns are used in the commission of crime. If you look at what they call active shooting cases and looking at places where people are legally able to own those guns, over the 8 years from 2014 to 2021, over half of those active shooting attacks were actually stopped by law-abiding citizens being able to go and have guns for protection.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've seen the number as high as 2.3 million and even higher about how many times each year guns are used to stop a crime from happening. And I think the left and those in the media certainly forget about all that.
The average estimate is about 2 million. The average estimate is about 2 million times a year.
All right. Dr. John Lott, as always, Crime Prevention Research Center. Thank you. Always good to see you, my friend.
Thank you. People can find more at our website at crimeresearch.org. Thank you.
All right. Crimeresearch.org it is.